This episode was developed deliberately by a human. It was shaped through real dialogue, reflection, and revision, not generated in one pass.
Some people see doomsdays ahead. We choose to thrive.
I was walking through the grocery store the other day, just doing the weekly run.
Okay.
And I was staring at a bottle of olive oil, of all things. And I just had this distinct kind of heavy feeling. It wasn't panic. I mean, I could afford the oil. And it wasn't anger, not exactly.
Is it something off?
It was this low-level background hum in my chest that just said, something isn't right.
Yeah.
And I looked around, and everyone else seemed to be shopping normally, but there was this tension in the air, like the gravity had been turned up just a little bit.
That is such a specific, relatable sensation. I call that the quiet pressure.
Quiet pressure. That is exactly it. It feels like the rules of the game have changed, but nobody sent out the memo.
Right. Nobody explained the new rules.
And I think a lot of people are walking around with that sensation right now, thinking it's just them. That they're just tired or burnt out or imagining it. But today, we're looking at something that says, no, you aren't imagining it. The physics of your life have actually changed.
Right. The rules of the road shifted while you were driving on it, and that feeling isn't a glitch, it's a signal.
Exactly. And to validate that signal, we're doing a deep dive today into a really fascinating and I'd say somewhat unsettling piece of analysis.
It's called Fear Before Identity, what economics reveals about the coming human shift.
And I want to set the stage here because when you hear economics, you probably think of, stock tickers or interest rate hikes. This isn't that.
Not at all. This is essentially a psychological profile of the entire economy.
It really is. It treats economics not as a bunch of charts, but as this ecosystem that shapes human behavior.
It reads less like a financial report and more like a sociological thriller in a way.
It does. And the core argument is that we're looking at the economy all wrong. We see the numbers, but the source argues we need to look at adaptation.
The central thesis is that our economic systems are currently evolving at an exponential rate, while human adaptation, our ability to process all that change, is still linear.
We're running simple software on incredibly complex hardware.
That is the perfect metaphor, and the glitch caused by that mismatch.
That's what we need to unpack today.
That is the source of that quiet pressure.
So let's lay out the roadmap for this deep dive. First, we're going to look at the old deal, the economic engine that defined the last 70 years and why it's smoking under the hood.
Then we'll get into why feeling afraid right now is actually the most rational, logical thing you can do.
Which is a controversial take because we love to tell people to stay positive.
Oh, huge. We're going to flip that script.
And then the part that really spun my head around. The source argues that the anxiety we feel now is just the warm-up.
Right. The real shift, the identity crisis, hasn't even fully hit us yet.
And finally, we will talk about the tool the source proposes to survive this, because apparently trying to be the smartest person in the room doesn't work when the room keeps changing shape.
It's a call for a completely different way of thinking, a shift from individual heroics to something else.
Okay, so let's start with the context. The old deal. The source describes a primary engine that drove society, specifically post-World War II. Break down this formula for me, because looking back, it sounds almost idyllic.
Well, it was simple, and for a specific period in history, it was incredibly effective. The formula was linear. You put in work.
Right.
That work reliably produced income. That income purchased security, a home, health care, a predictable retirement.
And on top of that foundation of security,
You could build meaning, family, and community.
it was a pipeline. You get on the conveyor belt at 22, you stay on it, you do your job, and at 65, you get off with a pension and a gold watch.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about money, it was about predictability.
Yeah.
You could project your life 20 years into the future with a reasonable degree of accuracy.
Yep.
You know that if you did X, you would get Y.
And that predictability allowed for psychological stability. You knew who you were because you knew where you fit in the machine.
Your identity was tied to your role on that conveyor belt.
Yeah. But the source argues this engine is sputtering. And honestly, we don't need a PhD to see that. We feel it.
No, you see it at the kitchen table. The source points out that the inputs and outputs have decoupled.
How so?
Work doesn't automatically equal security anymore. You have the gig economy, short-term contracts, the hustle culture.
Right.
You have people working 2 jobs, doing everything right according to the old rules, and still not being able to afford the entry-level version of that dream, like a house or a stable retirement plan.
It's interesting because usually when we hear about this, it's in macro terms. You turn on the news and hear GDP is up or unemployment is historically low.
And there's this cognitive dissonance. If the numbers are good, why do I feel bad?
Exactly.
That's the key distinction the source makes. It distinguishes between macroeconomic health and lived reality. It calls this a bills and logistics crisis.
A bills and logistics crisis. I like that.
People aren't waking up at 3 a.m. worrying about, the inherent contradictions of late-stage capitalism.
No, they're waking up worrying about rent.
They're worrying about debt. It's concrete. It's immediate.
It's the friction of daily life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where the tech factor comes in. The source identifies specific accelerants here.
It's not just inflation.
No, it's that the mechanism of value creation itself changed. We have automation, AI, advanced robotics.
Right, the technological elephant in the room.
These technologies are massive productivity boosters. We're making more stuff, more code, more content, more products, with fewer human hours than ever before.
But, and this is the friction point, the gains from that productivity aren't flowing back into that old work equals income pipe in the same way.
Exactly. The wealth is being generated, but the security isn't being distributed.
So the conveyor belt we mentioned, it's moving at 100 miles an hour now.
But the human's on it.
We could still only run at 10 miles an hour.
And the system is asking us to absorb these changes, to retrain, to pivot, to upskill, to change careers every 5 years, faster than human biology or culture can actually manage.
And that gap between the speed of tech change and the speed of human adaptation, that's where the tension lives.
That is the quiet pressure.
Which brings us to the emotion of the moment. Fear. Now, I'm a generally optimistic person. If I tell my friends I'm worried about the future or I'm hesitating on a big purchase, they usually tell me to stop doom scrolling.
Right. We treat fear like a pathology.
Like a bug in the code that we need to medicate or meditate away.
We do. We medicalize it. We say, oh, you have anxiety, implying your brain is misfiring. We treat it as a weakness.
But this source flips that completely upside down.
It argues that in our current specific economic conditions, fear is actually a sign that your brain is working perfectly.
A feature, not a bug.
Exactly. Think about it. If you're standing on a train track and the fog is thick and you feel the vibration of a train coming, but you don't know which track it's on or how fast it's moving, is fear irrational?
No, absolutely not. It's survival.
Yes. The source argues that when you have dependents, kids, aging parents, a partner, and the engine of security is sputtering, and you cannot clearly see a safe path forward because the technology is changing the landscape so fast,
then fear is the only logical response.
it's a rational calculation of risk.
So when people are hoarding cash or delaying having kids or staying in jobs they hate because they're safe, that's not them being stuck or lazy.
No, that's them hunkering down. It's a defensive posture. The source calls it stabilization.
Stabilization, that's the counterintuitive part.
It is. We usually think of fear as chaotic, as panic. But initially, fear is a stabilizer.
How so?
It makes you cautious. It prevents you from making reckless jumps in a dangerous environment. It helps you endure the transition. It forces you to freeze until you have more data.
It's the freeze response in fight or flight.
Yes, but here is the trap.
Yeah.
And the source is very clear about this danger.
You can't freeze forever.
Exactly. The source warns that while fear stabilizes you in the short term, if it becomes permanent, it narrows your imagination.
What happens to the brain then?
Well, when you're in survival mode, your field of vision shrinks. You focus entirely on the immediate threat, the bill due on Friday, the rumors of layoffs next month.
And you stop scanning for opportunity?
You stop innovating. You stop dreaming about 5 years from now because you're just trying to survive 5 minutes from now.
So you stick with the devil you know because the devil you don't know looks too terrifying.
Correct. And you have a whole generation potentially stabilized into stagnation. We're so busy bracing for impact that we can't steer the ship.
And while we're stuck in this defensive crouch, looking at our feet, the source says we're missing the bigger wave that's about to hit.
This was the aha moment for me in the text.
Yeah.
We think the problem is the money. We think if we just fix the inflation or get a slightly better job, we're good.
But the source says the economic stress is just the precursor.
This is the identity crisis concept.
Yes.
The analysis separates economic anxiety and identity crisis chronologically. It says, fear comes first. Identity questions come later.
Walk me through that timeline. Why do they happen separately?
Well, it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Right now, most people are in the economic phase.
Can I pay the bills? Is my industry going to exist in 5 years? Will AI take my department?
Those are survival questions.
Yeah.
You don't have time to ponder the philosophical meaning of your life when you're trying to make rent.
Right, you're putting out the fire in the kitchen. You're worried about the feng shui of the living room.
Exactly. But as this disruption continues,
Yeah.
as the old roles that used to guarantee stability stop working, the deeper questions start to bubble up.
Okay, so give me an example.
Let's say you're a graphic designer or a coder or a truck driver. You have defined yourself by that skill for 20 years.
It's the first thing you say at a dinner party. Hi, I'm Dave. I'm a truck driver.
I am what I do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when AI or automation devalues that skill by 90%? Or when the industry shifts so radically that your role doesn't exist anymore?
You lose the income, obviously. That's the fear part.
You lose the income first. But then, downstream, you lose the narrative. You stop asking, how do I pay the bills? And you start asking, who am I if I'm not doing this?
What is my value to society if a machine can do my job faster?
What does it mean to be a provider if I can't provide in the traditional way?
That is profound and honestly a little terrifying.
It is.
So the economic squeeze we're feeling now is basically the canary in the coal mine for a much deeper existential crisis.
Yes. Economics is the early warning system. If the economic pressure is visible now, which it is, it means the conditions for the identity disruption are already baking in the oven.
They just haven't finished cooking yet.
That's right. The source actually had a quote that stuck with me. Identity questions tend to emerge only after prolonged disruption.
It's like we can handle a bad year, we can grit our teeth.
Sure.
But can we handle a bad decade where the fundamental rules of value are rewritten?
That's the question. And the source is careful not to say everyone is having this identity crisis right now.
Right, it warns against projecting that. Most people are still just worried about the price of eggs.
But it argues we need to prepare for the identity shift because it is the inevitable downstream consequence of the economic shift. If we solve the money but lose the meaning, we're still in trouble.
Okay, so let's take stock. We have a broken engine. The old deal is gone. We have rational fear keeping us frozen. And we have a looming identity crisis.
It does sound pretty bleak if you look at it through the lens of the old deal.
Yeah, if you're waiting for 1995 to come back, this is a horror story.
But the source pivots here. It says the problem isn't necessarily the change itself. Change is inevitable. The problem is how we're trying to process it.
This is where we get to the solution. And the source didn't pull any punches here.
Yeah.
It basically said, if you are trying to figure this out alone, you are going to lose.
Individual human cognition is increasingly insufficient. That's the phrase used.
Which is a polite academic way of saying you aren't smart enough to handle this by yourself.
Not just you. None of us are. Yeah. Think about the volume of information we're dealing with.
It's everything. AI development, geopolitical shifts, supply chains, market volatility.
Climate impacts. The complexity is exponential. But our brains, we are still running on the same biological hardware we had 50,000 years ago. We have a cognitive cap.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose while solving a Rubik's Cube. You physically cannot process the inputs fast enough.
You end up just getting wet and confused. So if individual processing is the bottleneck, what's the fix?
We can't upgrade our biology overnight.
So the source proposes collective sense-making.
Okay, collective sense-making sounds a bit like corporate buzzword bingo. Let's ground this. What does that actually look like?
It's more rigorous than that. It's moving from isolation to collaboration, but with a technological layer.
So step one is what?
Step one is forming groups that work together to share analysis and compare perspectives. Just checking each other's blind spots.
Okay, so I see things you miss, you see things I miss. Basic teamwork.
Right. But step two is the game changer. Augmenting that human group with advanced AI tools.
So it's not man versus machine. It's team of humans plus machines versus the problem.
Yes. The source argues that small, trusted groups that effectively use AI can reach a deeper understanding of reality much faster than any isolated genius.
So the AI processes the massive data sets, the noise, And then the humans provide the context.
The values, the intuition, and the direction. Yes.
It's interesting because we usually frame AI as the thing that takes our jobs. Here, it's framed as a prosthetic limb that helps us walk through the storm.
It's an extension of our ability to perceive patterns. Think of it like a weather radar.
Right.
You can look out the window and see rain. That's individual cognition. But a radar system can see the hurricane forming 200 miles away. Collective sense-making with AI is building that radar system.
The source actually points to a specific entity as a case study for this. It mentions something called the 1% Club.
Right. And I want to clarify this immediately because the name triggers a reaction.
Yeah, I saw that and thought, okay, is this for billionaires? Is this some Illuminati thing?
No, and the source is very specific about this. In the text, the 1% Club isn't presented as an elitist retreat for the wealthy. It's not about net worth.
So what is this?
It's described as a community designed specifically for this kind of cognitive preparation. It refers to the small percentage of people who are willing to do the work of preparation.
So it's a gym for the new reality.
That's a great analogy. The source says this club, or groups like it, exists for those who are ready to move beyond isolated thinking.
For people who realize, okay, the old maps are useless, and I can't just rely on my own gut instinct anymore.
Exactly. I need better data, better tools, and better people around me.
And what's the output? If I join a group like this, do I get a crystal ball? Do I get to know what the stock market does next Tuesday?
No. And the source is very emphatic about this. Prediction is impossible. The world is too chaotic.
Right.
If anyone tells you they know exactly what will happen in 2030, they're lying. The goal isn't prediction, it's preparation.
What's the difference in this context?
Prediction is trying to guess the exact winning lottery number. Preparation is knowing that the lottery is a bad bet and having a solid investment strategy instead.
So it's about developing the capacity to notice patterns early.
Yes. If you can see the wave forming before it crashes, you have options. You can move. You can pivot. If you wait until you're underwater, you only have reactions.
Preparation over reaction. That actually takes a lot of the anxiety out of it.
It does. It restores agency. And that is the psychological key.
That word agency seems critical here. The whole first half of this deep dive was about how we feel helpless.
Right. The economy is doing things to us. Technology is happening to us.
We feel like passengers in a car with no driver.
Right. And this solution flips the script. It says, you can't stop the wave. You can't fix the broken engine of the global economy by yourself.
But you can change how you process the information.
You can upgrade your decision-making architecture by connecting with others and using these new tools. You can get back in the driver's seat of your own adaptation.
It's a shift from, I have to figure this out, to, we need to figure this out.
And that is the antidote to the fear we talked about. Fear thrives in isolation. When you're alone in the dark, every noise is a monster.
But when you have a flashlight and a team, it's just a noise.
You can identify it and deal with it.
So let's zoom out and look at the arc we've covered today. We started with a feeling, that quiet pressure at the grocery store.
We did. We validated that feeling. We established that we're living through a massive structural shift where the post-World War II economic rules are fading.
The promise that if you follow the rules, you'll be safe, that's broken.
And we realize that the fear we're feeling isn't weakness. It's a rational stabilization mechanism.
It's our brain telling us to be careful because the environment is dangerous.
But we can't get stuck there because the fear is just the precursor to the bigger shift, the identity crisis.
The moment where we have to redefine who we are when the old labels dissolve.
Exactly.
And the tool to navigate that isn't more isolation. It isn't hustling harder. It's collective intelligence.
Finding your squad, using the best AI tools available, and making sense of the chaos together. It's an invitation to stop playing a single-player game in a multiplayer world.
The complexity has leveled up. Our strategy needs to level up too. You know, there's one last thing I want to throw out there. We talked about how the old deal provided meaning because it was predictable. You knew the destination.
Right.
This new reality, it doesn't have a clear destination.
No, it doesn't. We're building the bridge as we walk on it.
And maybe that's the terrifying part, but also the liberating part. If the conveyor belt is broken, you have to walk.
But you also get to choose where you walk.
And that's the identity opportunity on the other side of the crisis. If the system doesn't hand you a prepackaged identity anymore, you have the burden, but also the freedom to construct one that actually fits.
But you need to survive the transition first.
I want to leave the listener with a thought to mull over, something that really stuck with me from reading this. If economics is just the early warning system and the identity shift is the real main event, ask yourself this. Are you still trying to navigate the future using only your own perspective, your own two eyes, your own limited bandwidth? Or are you ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, you need to tap into a collective intelligence that can see what you can't?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.
Take care.